Hello guys, and here we are again, Pauper deck tech discussion video. We explore again another of the, we can say it as a top tier archetype tribal, but this time we're going to check a different color splash in some way of this kind of tribal deck. So we call this one as the Izzet Faeries. Izzet means blue-red, red-blue, or splashing with the blue and red colors. This was played by George Anderson from a recent uploaded tournament results at the MTG Top 8 websites, our usual source of deck list, deck text, and other deck info for this format, and of course for standard. We're going to check on the list today. We have 19 creatures, 17 instants, only 18 lands. We have 7 sorceries, and 15 go with the sideboard cards. Now again, why is it like a fairies? What you can see here, we only have 8. We only have 8 fairies in the main deck. But nevertheless, we go with why this tribal, as for this specific cards, becomes relevant in this kind of deck lineup. So I'm going to start off with 1 drop. We have 4 copies of fairies here. This is just going to 1/1 picker for an early damage with flying, and can also get you to scry 2 and fix your next card draw in your deck. Then we have 3 copies of Ogre Bolas. Similar function with just getting you instant or sorcery card from the top 3 cards of library, and then you also get a 1/3 power, which can be really relevant in blocking off 1/1s or 2/1s from your opponent's board. We have a single copy of Phantom Seer. It's still going with a 2 drop, but you can also have this one as a morph ability by returning 2 islands you control to an owner's hand. When it is turned face up, you will draw 2 cards. So in a way, it can still act as a 2/2 for 3, or just later on become morph to get you card draw effects in this deck. Now for the other fairy in the deck, of course the Spell Starter Sprite, which is going to counter spells with mana cost X or less, depending on the number of fairies you control. And then we also have 2 copies of the Crimson Fleet Commodore. So this is the red splash into the deck, which also become a good attacker in the 4 drop column. We can have this one as a 5/2 trampler, and it also gets you to become the monarch as it enters the battlefield. Now for the under 4 drop, we have a single copy of Mystic, the Murmuring Mystic, which gets you a benefit of making an army of 1/1 Bluebird Illusion creature tokens with flying whenever you cast an instant of sorcery spells. So with this kind of lineup of 17 instant and 7 sorcery, you can make sure that your army of 1/1s flyers can basically get you somewhat of a game finisher setup for this creature drop for the 4 drop. And then the last but not the least are the 4 copies of your Ninja of the Deep Arts. Still going goes well the digital effect. It gets you to bounce your best creature, for example your fairy or your Spell Starter Sprite, and it deals combat damage to a player who will draw a card. And of course bouncing them, which means that you can get to use again the ATB effect, which is to counter spells equal to the number of fairies you control. Now for the setup of the lands, the instants, we don't really need to bother the lands, because we are going with the snow-covered version. Hence, the splash of red is very relevant in this deck. You can see here the 4 copies of Skred, which can deal damage to creature equal to the number of snow permanents you control. It's just going to be a solid 1 mana cost spot removal for this kind of setup. And of course, having also red gets you to access burn spells with Lightning Bolt. That's 2 copies, and a copy of Cast into the Spire, which can also exile artifact or deal 1 damage to each of the 2 target creatures. Now for the rest of the lineup for blue, which the usual card effects, we have Brainstorm, that's 2 copies. We have a copy of Curfew that can also bounce off a creature for each creature you control, which will also benefit you, of course, with your ETB effect creatures. And then of course counter spells are needed here with Counter Spell 4 copies, a copy of Spell Pierce, and some bounce spells with Echoing Truth, which are I think the copy is very useful against tokens deck, and Snap that can also bounce off a criminal creature, but you would also get to untap up to 2 lands. Now for the sorcery card, we have only the card draw effects with 4 copies of Preordain and Loyal Revealed, which also gets you to Island Cycle. And in the late game, of course, you can get to pay 5 to draw 3 cards. And for the lands, as mentioned, since we are using snow-covered lands for this setup, we have 12 islands that's snow-covered and 2 snow-covered mountain, and the only fixer with the island mountain, snowland, which is volatile sword. We can have that absolutely tap as it enters the battlefield, but it's also considered an island in a mountain. And then we have 2 copies of Ash Barrens, which can also bet you to cycle, basic land cycling, which is also relevant in case that you need a certain color or basic land card. You can use it one for the mana fix. Now for the sideboard, we're just going to do some specific color housers, as where you can say it is. We have 3 copies of Blue Elemental Blast. You can counter red spell, destroy target red permanent, no other notes whatsoever. We have 3 copies of Red Elemental Blast against blue, counter target blue spell, destroy target blue permanent. And of course, for the lineup against artifacts or affinity, we have Gorilla Shaman. You can have this 2 copies in the sideboard. You can board in against those decks by having also to get you to activate destroy target non-creature artifact with casting cost equal to X. So hence, artifact lands can also be destroyed by this casting or activating for only 1 colorless mana. So that's also a relevant sideboard card. In addition, we have a variance of sweep. You can see here, since cast into the fire would also act as a sweeper because of 1 damage to up to 2 target creatures. We also have a copy of Ferric Cannonade for the tokens or aggro matchup, which it can deal 2 damage to each non-pirate creature. And of course, the last one, there's 2 copies of Swirling Sandstorm, in which they can deal 5 damage to each creature without flying. But also you can have this one as activated if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard. Now, additional Murmuring Mystic are also added here in case for those matchups that somewhat find ways to really deal with your early threat. Then you have Murmuring Mystic to get you the chances to do a ton of 1/1 army, as you get to also cast your spells, your instant and sorcery to be specific, and generate those 1/1 that can also become a threat against those opponents with let's say mid-range or maybe a control-ish kind of setup. Now that's your 15 card sideboard. And last but not the least, we hit on the mana curve, which is going with the average mana value of 2.12. We have a lot of 1-drop and 2-drop of the mana value, and the color distribution is mostly blue. You can see here we have 41 and only 9 for red, but producers is also biased for the blue mana cost or blue color, and the red is only 4 for this one. Card types are also have here mostly fairies and wizard also, and the only token we have is the Bird Illusion, which is produced by the relevant Murmuring Mystic, which is again going with the mid-range and control matchups. This can generate your free creatures, stop their threats, and also win from that route. So I guess that's pretty much it, guys, for this one. We have again the Izzet Faeries deck by George Anderson from a recently uploaded Pauper tournament. For your next maybe for your next dailies on MTGO Online, or for your local Pauper weekly tournaments, I would suggest this variants of your deck. If you're tired with the mono blue, then I would go prefer adding red for a good old burn, so that you can also have a good gameplay experience of this tribe, in which not only you just go countering the spells but also burning up their creatures. So I guess that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, notifications on, and see you guys.